Good evening to each one of you. Greet you in Christ's name this evening. I have to admit, for most of the week, I've been sitting in the back corner, and I would probably be just as happy sitting back there this evening as I am here. And yet, I'm happy to be able to be here. And why am I happy to be able to be here? One reason is because we have freedom in this land. To be able to be in a gathering like this proves that we have freedom to worship how Christ has outlined for us. Another reason I'm happy to be here is I have been blessed with the youth that are here this year. Once again, it's enjoyable to see the energy and enthusiasm. It's enjoyable to see youth that are interested in serving Christ. I invite you to turn to Matthew chapter 16. If anyone would follow me. That's a song that we have sung a fair bit recently in our congregation. If anyone would follow me, let him take up his cross, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. That's what I want to speak on this evening. As I was thinking of what to share, I thought of that, and Brother Mike actually gave us already some thoughts on that and got us started down that road. Some of the verses he read were some of the same ones I had been thinking of. As I think about taking up your cross and following Christ, what I see right here is a representation of that already showing a commitment. When I received the applications, I looked down through, almost all of you indicated on there, the students, almost all the students indicated that they had already made a decision to take up their cross and follow Christ. And then when I see you here, you've taken off work for a week, you're away from your homes, you spent money to travel here, you actually came to a Bible school, not a volleyball tournament. There has been some games being played, but it's not really a sports activity. That further proves to me that you have actually made a decision to follow Christ. The question always will be for all of us, the day-by-day walk. How are we doing with that? I'm not here to question how your day-by-day walk is. I'm here to challenge you. And as I've been sitting in the back running the sound booth for the last 3 days, I have felt like each of the teachers have been kind of chewing away at the side of my message. Talking about the same things. What is it to deny ourselves? Wilmer's been talking about warnings from Hebrews, and that includes denying ourselves and following Christ. And Edsel's been talking about the history and what they decided years ago, and that was denying themselves. And Roger has been talking about finances and how we deny ourselves and follow Christ. I'd like to just read Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 through 26. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his own soul? That's the question that is before us tonight. As I thought about these verses, in verse 24 it says, if any man will come after me, it denotes a desire. If any man will come, and then it tells us what we need to do. We must have a desire to follow Christ. God puts that desire in our lives, but we must follow up on that. We must act on that. To deny self, I'm a little bit curious what you would say if you were to give the definition of to deny self. What does that mean? The definition from the dictionary is to deny utterly, to disown, to abstain. As I thought about denying self, it's twofold. We need to recognize our independent spirit. The spirit that says, I want to do what I want to do. And we need to deny that. We need to abstain from that. We need to put that to death. And that's a thought we'll have just a little bit later also. My independent spirit of wanting my way rather than God's way. And then there's another part of denying myself as my own selfish ambitions. So it's not just not wanting a creator to control me, but I want the things that I want. And both of those different thoughts need to be dealt with. To deny myself requires a cutting away. It does not come naturally. Maybe it does to you, and I don't think it does. Does it come naturally to any of us to deny ourselves, to cut away those things that are detrimental to us? We must voluntarily choose to put that away. Now, denying yourself voluntarily does not have the thought of hanging on until it just ripped from my grasp. That's not voluntary. That's not denying myself. It doesn't have the thought of resigning when the inevitable is in sight. I know what's coming, and I just resign myself to my fate. That is not denying myself. We have been given a free will. We've been given a choice to choose who we're going to follow, a choice to choose what will we want. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, that choice. Jesus clearly tells us here in these verses that we need to deny ourselves. We need to count our own lives, our own thoughts, our own desires as nothing. In verse 23, starting right before I read there, he was saying in verse 21, he began to show his disciples how that he must go into Jerusalem and suffer many things and be killed. And Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, "Be it far from thee, Lord." But he turned and said unto Peter, "Get thee behind me, Satan. Thou art an offense unto me." Why? Because thou savorest not the things that be of God, but those that be of men. That is why you and I need to deny ourselves, because my flesh does not savor the things of God. It savors the things that be of men. It's already been said this week, I forget, possibly Wilmer that said it, that until we take our human thinking and turn it on its head, we're not thinking clearly. We won't be able to understand the values of the kingdom of God until we turn our own thinking upside down. God's ways are not our ways. My ways protect me. His ways glorify him and bring me the best in life. My ways protect me, but they don't bring me the best in life. When I choose my way, I think that I'm saving my life, but in reality, I'm throwing it away. Another illustration that was used already this week was if someone were to bring a wheelbarrow load of gold and wheel it up your lane and tell you, "I'll trade you wheelbarrow load for wheelbarrow load. You give me the gravel in your driveway and I'll give you the gold." Would you do that? But in his illustration, the person said, "No, I need that gravel because that's what I drive on. That's what keeps my car out of the mud, and it's what keeps my feet out of the mud, and we need the gravel on our driveway. So, no, I'm not interested in trading you a wheelbarrow load of gold for a wheelbarrow load of my gravel." And we say that's ridiculous, but the brother that shared that said the reality is the reason why we say that's ridiculous is because we recognize the value of gold. When he said that, the first thing my mind went to is, we sell stone by the scoop. And I thought, boy, that'd buy an awful mighty lot of stone, one wheelbarrow load of gold. We deal in stone. People spend amazing amounts of money on stone. And yet, the value, if you value gold, you would trade all the stone in the world for it. But if you don't know what the value of gold is, you wouldn't trade your gravel for it because that has value to you. When you save your life, when you attempt to save your life, you are showing, I'm showing, that I do not understand the values of Christ's kingdom. As I think about denying ourselves, we cannot deny ourselves in two little areas of life over here. And I was trying to think to put some words to that, and I didn't write anything down, but we'll just say that we can't say, well, I deny myself. I drive an old car and I always wear secondhand clothes. But then over here on the other side, I live extravagantly and I do whatever I want to do. The question is, am I denying myself? Am I following the biblical command of denying myself and taking up my cross? It doesn't work that way. You can't choose part of the package. You can't choose to deny something over here and choose your own way over here. For self-denial to be an effective decision, it must be complete. When I say that, I'm not suggesting that any of us are perfect, and I'm not suggesting that I'm perfect. There are things in my life I need to keep working on, areas in my life I need to keep denying. I need to keep learning to deny myself. But we need to have in focus that as I'm aware and with God's grace, I will continue to deny myself in all areas of life for that to be effective. Denying my personal desires, as I was thinking about that, why do we want people to like us? Why do we want people to think we're good looking? Why do we want to drive a nice vehicle? Why do we want to go to the right Bible school? I don't know. I guess all of you thought this was the right one for this week. We want to do those things often because we want other people, we want attention, we want the approval of other people. Denying my personal desires is going to lead to a life, a genuine life. Let me back up. Denying my desires and taking up my cross and following will lead to a genuine life that bears fruit that actually attracts people to me. If I do not deny my own desires, I will end up doing a lot of things. I'll work hard to get you to like me, and in the end, I will end up being a person that is not really who I am and not who you thought I was. The only way to truly gain what we so often want, and that's the approval of others, is by denying ourselves, taking up our cross, and following Christ, looking for the approval of Christ. When you have the approval of God in your life, it won't really matter so much what other people think. And those that are godly will approve of your life. And those that aren't godly really don't count because they do not understand the real values in life. I had a friend when I was growing up in school, a little bit younger than me, a grade or so behind me. He was always doing things for attention, always. He was just one of those guys that if we were at a birthday party one time, it's kind of the thing that always jumps out at me. And his mom said, all right, a bunch of his friends were there. And he said, all right, line up, I'm going to take a picture. And he started making a big, big fuss. No, I don't want this picture. And he made a big fuss about it. The reality is he wanted a picture. He wanted attention. But it has always stood out to me that the things he wanted the most, he was trying to get, and the way he went about getting them were the exact things that actually kept him from achieving his goal. If you and I don't deny ourselves, we're throwing our lives away. We're achieving the exact opposite of what our goals are. We heard today about fallow ground. Talked about fallow ground just growing up, ground that's just left. It's not tilled, and it just grows up and it goes wild. And talked about the thought was on the wildness of it and how it just kind of goes to pieces. And yet I had a different take on fallow ground. I heard someone say in another message one time that if you take a piece of worn out ground that's just barely producing and you just let it go fallow and it grows up in grass and brambles and briars and there's saplings that grow up, you give it quite a number of years and you come back and reclaim the land, and nature actually builds the land back up. The grass dies every year and it falls down. It adds nutrients. The leaves fall. The brambles, they're there. And it actually can self-rejuvenate the land many, many times when it lays fallow. Human nature is not that way. Your life will not rejuvenate if it lays fallow. The only way for you to build your life up is by cultivating it, by digging it deep, breaking up that hard ground. Your life is completely on the opposite, because as you work it and as it's fruitful, it will actually produce more and more. There will not be any worn out ground that's actually denying itself and following Christ. The worn out is going to be the person that's trying to impress others on their own, that's trying to live life on their own. In verse 25 it says, "For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. Whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it." We talked a little bit about saving, trying to save, and we think we're grabbing hold of something. We're trying to save it, and yet we're going to lose it. That in verse 25 there, the word lose means to destroy fully, to destroy, to die, to perish. And as I read that, it seems to be in my control. As I save my life, I destroy my life. I cause it to die. I cause it to perish. Whosoever will save, he thinks he's saving, he's actually destroying. And then whosoever will lose, and there's another, in verse 26 it talks about what is a man profited if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul. Again there, that's to receive damage, to suffer loss. Do I give up my life? Verse 25, the second part there says, whoever will lose his life. He gives it away. He's willing to let it go. For Christ's sake, that's the one that will find it. You know, we all desire a good end, but do we look to the end here, or do we look to the end in eternity? Am I looking at my own comforts and desires, or am I looking at eternity? Take up his cross. You know, a cross is an instrument of capital punishment. A cross means death. We know that. You see alongside the highway, you see crosses. That means someone died there. Usually, that's what they're pointing out. Christ was crucified on a cross. It was a very cruel death. It was not a death that anyone would choose. It was a cruel, drawn-out process. It was a painful decision. Christ went to that cross. He was willing to go to that cross for you and I. Matthew 10, verse 38 says, "And he that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me." It's a requirement that you and I take up our cross and follow Christ. If we don't, we're not worthy to be Christ's disciple. It's a deliberate choice. Christ had the opportunity to call 10,000 angels. He chose not to. He said, "Father, not my will, but thine." He denied himself. He took up his cross. There's a saying out there, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Have you ever seen that? When maybe you've tried this, you convince your friend that this is a better way to do it. And usually when you convince with force against their will, they might do it your way. They might play the game you want, whatever, but they're usually of the same opinion that what they thought was right is still right. Taking up our cross is not something that anyone can force you to do. No one can convince you to take up your cross. No one, not even your parents, can pass down taking up your cross. They can show you the way. They can model the way. They can do that well, and that's very important. But no one can do it for you. It's something that each person must do of their own free will. The cross is a deliberate choice. When I'm offended at a teaching of the cross, am I offended of a teaching of the cross? If I'm offended at a teaching of the cross and I turn away, what is that doing? As I thought about that, If I choose to turn away, I think it was Brother Roger said that he's an accountant, and he had learned about compound interest, the Dave Ramsey way, and just reinvesting and building wealth. And at some point he came across the teaching, the doctrine of non-accumulation, the teaching of the cross. And he came across that, and he had a decision to make. Is this what the Bible says, and is this what I'm going to do? What happens when we come up to those decisions and we get offended and we turn away? I put it in I'll give you an analogy of a internet scenario. When someone turns away like that, I'm going to liken it to a hacker's dream. Hackers would just love to find their way into a little back door, a security breach of any of these big companies. They would love to find their way in the back door of a credit card company's files. When you are offended and turn back from taking up your cross, when you're offended by a teaching of the Word, you are creating a back door for Satan to come in and to steal your eternal wealth. There have been people that for years have built eternal wealth in heaven, and then sometimes they become offended, and they create, in that offense, they create a weakness in their lives, and Satan is able to come in the back door, and he's able to rob them of a lot of the things that they have done in life. He's able to rob them if they are not willing to come to the foot of the cross again and deny themselves. He's able to rob them of the eternal joys that they would have. There was a man at the Room. Quite a few of you would know about the Room. It's a soup kitchen in Chambersburg that we have been going to for quite a number of years. There was a young man came in there. When he first came to the Room, he was a cross-dresser. He was dressed like a woman, and he had quite a few conversations with multiple brothers. I know with myself, with Kurt, and I know there was multiple other brothers that he had a lot of conversations with. And slowly but surely, Donald started changing. After a while, Donald didn't come in dressed like a woman, he came in dressed like a man. And after a while, Donald asked about the different things in the Bible, and he was reading his Bible. He had to have been, because he was talking about things he had read, and it made sense. Donald slowly but surely was walking and learning, and at one point he told me that he had lived a homosexual life and that he wanted to stop that. He said, God doesn't like that, does he? And I said, no, God doesn't like that. That grieves his heart. That's not his plan for you. And Donald kept coming, and at some point, and I forget the exact point it was, he told me, and I believe he told some others, he just felt like he needed to commit his life to Christ. He was learning, he was growing, but he needed to commit his life to Christ. And he wasn't sure. He wasn't sure. And ultimately, Donald made the decision, no, he won't commit his life to Christ. Within 6 months, Donald was in jail. I think it was actually less than that. He was in jail for 6 months or a year, I forget. He came out of jail. He came back to the Room, and he was repentant, at least to some degree. He admitted that he had not been willing to move forward, and that the turmoil in his mind had gotten him into trouble. The being offended by the doctrine of needing to take up his cross. And he started talking to us again. And he talked, and I felt like we saw him walking step by step. He didn't look like we do. That's not the important thing. He was walking. And he came to a point of needing to decide for Christ. And Donald again said no. Just like that, he was back in jail again. And Donald got out of jail the second time, and he came to the Room some, but much more cool, much more distanced. I don't know that I ever connected with him real well after that. And today, Donald is back in jail again. He very brutally treated an old lady in Chambersburg, and I think he will be in jail for quite a while. But Donald had an opportunity, and he chose not to. My plea to you today is, if you come up against any teaching of the cross, a new thing, maybe you've been denying yourself, you've been taking up your cross. If you come up against a teaching that Brother Roger said he came up against, he was never taught about non-accumulation. If you come up against something like that, what are you going to do? Are you going to deny yourself, or are you going to say no? Donald said no, and he's in prison. It actually makes my heart sad to think about him, because out of all the people in the room, I felt like Donald was one of those that had changed the most, and the change was the most visible. There's a choice to be made, to follow Christ or to follow the world. It says you will either hold to one or the other. You cannot serve both. You can't put one foot in the world and one foot with Christ. It doesn't work. If you simply meander down the road and you can't make up your mind, do I want to go all the way with Christ or not? I'm here to tell you, you've made up your mind. Doesn't mean you can't change it. But if you have not, if Christ has called you, if he's put something in your path and you have not chosen to deny and take up your cross, then by default, you have automatically chosen to be offended and to turn away. Non-commitment to carrying the cross is a commitment to avoiding the cross. Again, no one can force you to do it. It cannot be inherited. Your parents can show you the way, they can model the way, but you cannot inherit. You must personally decide. You will follow someone. Thinking of following, taking up our cross, denying ourselves, taking up our cross and follow, you will follow someone. Have you ever heard anybody say, I'm not following anyone, I'm my own person? Do you believe that? It's not true. Everyone is following. People are following different people, but everyone is following someone. Everyone's following what they value. What are you and I valuing? Something else I heard in a message recently, thinking about that, saying that I'm not following anyone, I'm just doing my own thing. Don't lie to other people, and don't lie to yourself. When you say, I'm not following anybody else, I'm just being me, don't lie to other people, and don't lie to yourself. But remember in that you are the easiest person for you to lie to. Because if you try to lie to anyone over here, or if you try to lie over here, they're going to see through it a whole lot faster than you are. If you're trying to lie, if you're being dishonest with yourself, you're fooling yourself far more than you are other people. Follow me. We have an example of following. Let's turn to Philippians 2. Denying is a choice we must make. Taking up our cross is a choice we must make. Following is a choice we must make. We can start, but if we do not follow, we have not gone far enough. Philippians chapter 2, verse 5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Wherefore God also hath highly exalted him, and given him a name which is above every name. And I'll stop there. Christ gave us a perfect example in following, in faithfully walking forward. He made himself of no reputation, took upon him the form of a servant, humbled himself, became obedient. I'd like to turn to John chapter 15, verse 18. Jesus said, "If the world hate you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you." We have that example of Christ. It hated Christ before it hated you and I. If you're finding that the world is hard, it was hard on Christ also. Verse 19, "If you were of the world would love his own. But because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. Remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also." Christ has walked the path before us. We are not asked to go anywhere. We're not asked to do anything. We're not asked to endure anything that Christ has not already done. We have Christ's example in following. True followers are disciples. Disciple is one who accepts or assists in spreading the doctrines of another, a convinced adherent of a school or individual. Are you and I a disciple of Christ? True followers will be disciples. They will model themselves after the one that they are following. They will be a convinced adherent. Are you and I adhering to Christ's teachings? I must be transformed to be able to follow Christ. We talked about that. It's not my way. I can't do it with my own thinking. I need Christ thinking in my life. We talked about turning our thinking upside down, standing it on its head. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says, "And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." That's what we have to do to present our bodies a living sacrifice. We have to be transformed to be able to follow Christ. You know, sometimes people say, "Well, I'm tired of that job," and whatever the job is, or maybe it's a church they're tired of, maybe it's whatever the situation is they're tired of, and they change. And the question is, are they just singing the second verse of the same song, or are they singing a different song? You've heard the metaphor, maybe. Are we singing the same verse of the second verse of the same song, or are you singing a different song? You cannot follow Christ by just reforming your life. You must be transformed. Transformative steps. As I was thinking about this, we must encounter Christ's teaching. We must be brought to the need for Christ's teaching. We must believe Christ's value systems. That's been brought out this week. That if you don't know the value of a wheelbarrow load of gold, you will value your wheelbarrow load of gravel more. Why don't we value treasures in heaven more than we do my own way and treasures on earth? We must put to death my values, and we must take on Christ's values. We must allow him to transform our lives and to help us open our vision to what the real values in life are. I need to examine my life, and I need to take up my cross as Christ is showing me each day. I need to continue steadfast. Transformed life. 2 Timothy 3:14 says, "But continue thou in the things which thou hast learned and hast been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them." Continue in the things that you have learned. Romans 8, verse 18 says, "For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us." Do you and I reckon that our sufferings, whatever they are now, are simply not even comparable to the glory which will be revealed in us, to the glory of heaven, to the privilege of serving the King and being welcomed into his heavenly kingdom? True followers must be disciples. You've heard about the fisherman, the man that decided he was going to be a fisherman, and he bought a fishing reel. Maybe it was one of those $160 ones that Wilmer saw. He bought a really nice fishing reel. And he bought some books on it. Maybe he got on the internet and checked out some articles on it, and he joined a fishing club, and he went to their meetings. I have a question for you. If he does all that, is he a fisherman? If he never fishes, is he a fisherman? No, we say no, that's ridiculous. If you want to be a fisherman or a hunter or whatever you want to be, an excavator, or if you just want to be a storekeeper, you have to do those things. You can't just read about them. That's head knowledge, but that's not really what you are. True followers must be disciples. True followers will follow God, will trust God for a good end. A young man asked his father, "Dad, is it worth it to follow Christ?" I just had this young man tell me this, or his dad told me this. Is it worth it to follow Christ? How do you answer that question? Have you ever asked that question? Do you ever wrestle with that question? I've wrestled with that question in my life. Sometimes in our humanity, we wrestle with the question, is it worth it to follow Christ? And yet, true followers commit the end to the Lord. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11 says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." 2 Peter 2, verse 9, "The Lord knoweth how to deliver the godly out of temptations, and to reserve the unjust unto the day of judgment, to be punished." David said that. He had those same thoughts. He looked around, he said, "Lord," he said, I'm following you, and look at this person over here. They're not following you, and they're prospering. The Lord knoweth how to reserve the unjust to the day of judgment, to be punished. Matthew chapter 19, verse 29 says, "And every one that hath forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit eternal life." True followers will commit the end to God. True followers are faithful. If you're a follower tonight, we call you a Christian. If you're a Christian, you're a little Christ. Those of you that have children, and those of you that have little siblings, know that little children follow. My children, different times I find them looking at me. They just look. I have a 7-month-old who spends a lot of time just looking. And it's probably because I'm as old as I am and have as many children as I do that I really think about that. She's just looking at me a lot whenever I'm around. And I wonder what's going on in her head. Is she's learning something. What is she learning? And you don't have to be a parent for that to happen. My oldest daughter is a second mother to some of my youngest daughters. They look to her, and when she's away for an extended time and she comes home, they come running. Leah, wow, Leah's back again. They're modeling after her. We see some of my little girls, they sit on the stair steps and they play church, and they usually have dollies, and some of those dollies get spankings. Now, those little girls do not like spankings. I happen to know that, but they spank their dollies. I have a boy that really, really likes skid loaders and machines. Anything that's a machine, trucks, trailers, machines, they don't even have to match in size. As long as we can put them all together, they're following, they're learning. And I had a boy some years ago when we started building our house that he wanted to grow up and get big so that he could help me build the house. And he was always around there. And they do things that you're doing. They want to do what you're doing. Are you a follower in the same way of Christ? Are you observing Christ's life and saying, I want to do that, and following just like it? When you play the game Follow the Leader, you must pay attention. Can you play Follow the Leader while you're talking to your friend over here and you're the first guy right behind the leader? It doesn't work. Usually when you play the game Follow Leader, or at least when we did long time ago, the person that was leading was allowed to do whatever he wanted to do, and the next guy had to pay attention and follow. And sometimes they did some pretty crazy things. And if you aren't paying attention, you're not going to catch that. To follow your leader, you must pay attention. You must pay attention to every detail. In Matthew chapter 25, it tells a parable about a man that went into a far country, and he called his servants and he gave them his goods and said, take care of this until I come back. And when he came back, he reckoned with them. And I'm just going to read a couple verses here. It says, and so he that had received 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more. His Lord said unto him, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. He had followed his master's instructions. He had taken those goods and he had done something with them. He had learned somewhere to do that. And the second one that received 2 talents came and said, you gave me 2 talents, and here are 2 more that I have gained beside. And his master said, well done. You've been faithful in a little, and I'm going to give you more. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. And the last one came and he said, you gave me 1, and I knew that you're a hard man. And I knew that you reap where you haven't sown, and you gather where you haven't done anything for it. And so I just put it in the ground and I hid it. And he said, if you knew that I reap where I didn't sow, then why didn't you give it to why didn't you learn from that? Why didn't you give it to the money exchangers to at least earn interest? You knew that I was very careful with my money. So as I read that, I thought about we have a calling. Followers must be faithful. You and I have the ability to see how Christ has led in his word. The example he left for us, we have the ability to see that. We must be faithful in following that example. True followers will be overcomers. In Revelations, as it's talking to the different churches there, at least 4 times it says, to him that overcometh will I give. Will I give to eat of the tree of life. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna. To him that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, I will give him power over the nations. To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame and am set down with my Father. Christ overcame, and he sat down with his Father in his throne. And he's offering that to you and I today. You can be an overcomer. We need to take up our cross, deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow him. Matthew chapter 16, verse 24 again. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. We're given a choice to follow, of who we will follow. You do have a choice of who you will follow. What you do not have is a choice of what the results of your choice will be. You'll make a choice for who you will follow. You'll make a choice to deny yourself and follow, or a choice to be offended and to turn back. You have the opportunity to make that choice. You do not have the opportunity to decide what those results will be. In Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 11, I'm going to go to verse 15. It says, see, I have set before thee this day life and good, death and evil. And I do want to back up here a little bit. In verse 11 through 14, it says, for this commandment which I command me this day, it's not hidden from thee, it's not far off, it's not in the heavens that you should say, who's going to go get it for us and bring it down. It's not beyond the sea that you should say, who's going to go get it and bring it to us. It's nigh unto thee, in thy mouth, in thy heart, that thou mayest do it. See, I have set before thee this day life and good, death and evil. in that I command thee this day to love the Lord thy God, and to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his judgments, that thou mayest live and multiply, and the Lord thy God shall bless thee in the land whither thou goest to possess it. But if thine heart turn away, so that thou wilt not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other gods and serve them, that's not denying self. It says, I denounce unto you this day that you shall surely perish, and that you shall not prolong your days upon the land whither thou passest over Jordan to go to possess it. Verse 19 again, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that thou and thy seed may live. We have that opportunity to choose life. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, and that was touched on here this evening, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the hand of the Father. He was focused on the joy and put aside the shame of the cross. Joshua chapter 24, verse 15 says, choose you this day whom ye will serve. The gods that your father served on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell? Joshua said, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. You have started out, you have chosen to follow Christ. You have taken that step to deny yourself, to take up your cross. That's a daily step. To follow him is what each of us must do. I encourage you, I am encouraged to see the youth here. Each one of you, you bring encouragement to me, and I pray that you would continue to follow that path each day. Is there any comments, corrections that you would have this evening?